Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss Daredevil and Punisher. So of course, Daredevil Born Again Season 2, I was about to say Daredevil Season 2, but technically that's different. But Daredevil Born Again Season 2 recently ended. I'm a little bit behind, but just in time to see the last two episodes of that and then also watch the Punisher special as well. So I wanted to talk about both today because I didn't think the Punisher needed like a long episode or really an episode by itself because it was so short, and honestly there isn't that much to say. So I was like, you know what, we'll just put them both together. They've already teamed up anyway, so it kind of fits. But Born Again Season 2, it was pretty good. First off, Bullseye is awesome. Like, I can't wait to see what they do with his character, even though they kind of sent him off with Matthew Lillard, which is also great. He was really interesting in this. They didn't do too much on that, where it was just kind of like, yeah, pseudo like high-ranking official kind of FBI CIA type of dude. And Luke Cage was working for him, doing some crazy stuff. And then, you know, Bullseye is now the guy that they got to replace him, who's probably a bit more efficient if you want like just a super killer. So it makes a lot of sense that they kind of, you know, admittedly, I'd say they traded up. Luke didn't really want to do it anyway, so I'm sure he, you know, there were some times where it was just like, this effing blows. So, you know, you get Bullseye and he's like, I don't mind, you know, he just kills people for fun. It's like a cool thing to him. So, you know, they kind of traded up, and I would love it if we got a special. You know, like, you know, Punisher got his special. I would love like just an insane Bullseye special. They did a really great job with his character this season, and he was super fun to watch. So like just having him come in and be like this weird middle ground character where he's still obviously the bad guy in a multitude of ways, all the things that he's done, but at the same time he does, you know, he does his one good deed by the end, and it's like, okay, this is interesting. Let's see what they end up doing with this character going forward. So I'm sure that's not the last of him that we've ever seen. I'm sure, you know, something will happen, but he was really fun. Like, I just wanted to point him out because I like when they focus on him, because he was great in, I think he showed up in season 3 of the original series, if I'm not mistaken. He was great in that. Technically, he was great even in like the 2 seconds he was in like the first season of Born Again. He had some of the best stuff because it was like, dang, he killed Foggy. That's super effed up. But also, he had like just the crazy breakout sequence where it's like, let me spit my tooth in this dude's neck or something and kill him, which is insane. It was like, yeah, this is fun to watch. Like, this guy's just crazy and also impossibly skilled with ricochets and all this stuff. He just, you know, throwing knives in the ground. He threw a what was it, a lobster claw into like the back of a dude's head, which is insane. Like, the amount of force you would have to do for that to work anyway doesn't even make sense. But it's like, yeah, sure. So Bullseye, definitely a highlight of the season for sure. I thought he was great. As far as, you know, kind of our usual cast, I thought everybody was good. You know, R.I.P. Foggy, even though obviously that was, you know, last season, but still, you know, that blows. It was cool that we got that flashback episode. That was pretty nice, and they had multiple characters come in. It didn't end up being the flashback episode in the way that I anticipated, because of course, you know, if you knew about it, it was like, hey, we're gonna see Foggy again. We're gonna have like some flashbacks. It's like, okay, that's cool. I wasn't expecting it to be the episode where Vanessa died. It was like, oh, that's not how I thought that was gonna happen. It was cool to see Wesley again, by the way, but that wasn't how I thought we were going to have a flashback episode where it was going to be, you know, Vanessa kind of going through her, basically like the moment that she ended up meeting Fisk, like leading up to it. It was like, huh, that's very interesting. So Vanessa dies. That was also pretty crazy. Not as simplistic as I was expecting. Oh, you know, it's crazy. It's like, man, she should have listened to her guy. He was just like, please be safe. And she, you know, she was real confident about it, and then she died, and it was kind of nuts. But heck of a moment where you see Fisk lose the one person he had, and then it's like, okay, well, I don't think he's gonna be good after this. Not that he was good, you know how it is, but it's not that he was like the nicest person at all. But I don't think he's gonna be really happy after this. And then they have this doctor, which I'm not gonna lie. If a doctor came up to me and said any of the things he said, I'd be pissed too. I don't think I would have, you know, snapped his spine by squeezing him super hard, but I would have been annoyed too. I'd have been like, why are you talking to me right now? We did everything we could, and now she's in a better place. I'm gonna send you to a better place. You better get out of my face with that crap. So I would have been annoyed anyway. Like, I can't justify him murdering the guy, because he could have been like, I'm so sorry. He could have said everything perfectly. He would have died anyway. It wouldn't have made a difference. But he was definitely, it was weird. Like, I was like, this is super weird for a dude to be like, we did everything we could and we tried, and well, now you're dead. Like, now you're dead. And, you know, Fisk being Fisk, he got away with that, but he did like just snap a dude's spine in the middle of a hospital, and it was like, I'm pretty sure everyone knows that he was doing that, but at the same time, it's Fisk doing Fisk. I mean, he smashed, I forgot who the dude was, but he ripped the dude's head like clean open. in the last season. So it's like, you know, he does things in front of people or in very public places, and it's Fisk. It's like, it's the Kingpin. He'll walk off and they, you know, boom, he gets away with it, no problem, no muss, no fuss. So that was pretty nuts. Where I was just like, it just squeezed that dude straight to death. Because I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's not going in. Like, as soon as he like clasped his hands, I was like, there it is. I was like, I don't think this is gonna go well. And then he did the little clasp for support, and I was like, he's done. And then he just squeezed him, and he was out of there. I was like, okay, well, that's one down. But they killed off Vanessa. That was pretty nuts. Like I said, I was not expecting that. So Vanessa is no longer with us. And then as we continue on, we lose more people. And I thought it was interesting. You know, like we lost one character who was in like, what, two or three scenes. He was in more scenes in the episode he died. I don't even remember the kid's name, but the guy who was like their informant for half a minute. Like, he died so fast. I was like, dang, they didn't even do an episode where they kind of thought it was him. It was just like, no, they knew it was him. They figured it out super duper fast, blew his brains out, and then that was it. It was like, that's crazy. So he's gone. Not that I remember his name, but that was a little nuts. That was a crazy moment. And then of course we get, I want to say we had 8 episodes, so episode 7, whatever the penultimate episode was, and they're going through this process, and it's like, you know, it's been building up over and over again. We have, you know, kind of the BB report and everything going on there, and it's like, hey, there's been some leaks. You may or may not know who's leaking it. Are you gonna play your part? And he was so close. He was so close to playing his part, and then he didn't. And Buck was like, blew his brains out. Like, and it was crazy. It was an interesting scene because I'm like, I think he's gonna kill him, but Buck is really hesitating, and he cared. And, you know, like, he was like, okay, you know, like, I like the kid. Like, he, you know, he was really warming up to him, and you can tell it just sucked. Where it was like, dang, I did not want to have to kill this kid, and that really sucks. And that did suck. That was definitely a surprising moment, but at the same time, it was also like, I don't really think he's getting out of it. Like, honestly, once he took the charge to do it, and he was like, hey, and unfortunately, I really cannot remember the character's name, but once he made that decision to, like, be good in the end, I was like, oh, he's gone then, because I don't think, you know, like I said, aside, like, he had hesitation, but he didn't have enough hesitation. You know, like, Buck wasn't gonna not do the job. And it was like, oh, he's dead then. Like, that was the first thing I thought, was like, oh, well, there is no getting out of this one. And there wasn't. And he beat the crap out of him. And then he just blew his brains out. And it was like, all right, well, that's it. And he's just gone. And it was like, oh, that's crazy. So that was nuts. That was definitely a heck of a penultimate episode. And then, of course, we have the actual finale. And it was good. It was interesting, to say the least. It was interesting. But I did really enjoy it. I think my main thing is the way it, like, genuinely, the way it ended. Like, the whole episode was like, okay, they're doing the case, and it was very clear. Like, as soon as they were like, there's gonna be cameras, I was like, okay, he's gonna out himself as Daredevil. In my head, I was thinking he was gonna show up as Daredevil and then, you know, rip the mask off in court and make a real show of it. But he just shows up at first, and it was very simple. It was like, hey, the missing dude, he just randomly shows up. So then they start going, they have their back and forth. He's coming in, they do all their lawyer stuff. And it was actually really entertaining to watch, because I was actually kind of curious, like, how is this gonna play out? Even with the kind of smoking gun of him being Daredevil, how do they build up to that, to the point that it works? Because you know, if he'd done it like right in the beginning, they still had to go through that process of being like, hey, we had to establish this. What's a criminal? What's a vigilante? You know, like, all of these different statutes that have been built up, you know, what are these ideas, and, you know, the statistics of, like, crime rates and all that stuff. So there's a lot that they had to build up to before he was sure it was time to reveal himself. And I like that. I thought it was pretty fun, like, going through that process and being like, okay, this is cool. Like, that admittedly was one of the things I enjoyed throughout the series, whether it was, you know, the little bit that we got in Born Again or in the original series. Them actually doing lawyer work could be entertaining, especially when it involved heroes. You know, I mean, we of course have the very famous Punisher moment where it's like, hell, I loved it. You know, it was like, dude, please stop. Like, I'm trying to help you here. So we've had some really great moments in court, and this, I would definitely say, is one of the highlights, where he literally outs himself. Like, you know, they go through this whole process, and I love Kingpin's position on it all, where it was like, you could see him getting mad, like when, you know, Matt first showed up and he was pissed and we saw him on TV, and then as they go through, he's like, okay, I'm ready to go down this road with you. Let's see how this pans out. And then it's not the attorney general, I forgot what the woman's actual position was, but she walked in the courthouse and she wasn't dead either, and I bet he was just like, why the fuck is everybody living? Like, I'm trying to like tie up some loose ends here, and people just keep walking through these doors that are supposed to be dead. So I know he was pissed when she showed up. It was like, she's supposed to be dead yesterday. Why is this going on? So I love that moment where she just walks in and just throws everything off. The psychiatrist who used to date Matt, like, she's super effed up. Like, we knew that was happening. You know, by the end, she finally puts on the mask, but she's just been going down a spiral and just been losing it more and more. She got pissed off with Karen, which is a funny scene. Like, they both got each other like a couple of times, and then of course, you know, she slapped Karen a few times. It was like, okay. And then of course it comes up in court, because I'm like, when she slapped her, I was thinking about that. I was like, once she was actually like on, like, not on stage, I forgot what the heck they call it, but when she was up for questioning, I'm like, she beat the brakes off her at least a little bit. And then of course they brought it up. I was like, okay, they at least brought it up, because I'm like, you can't really just do that and then no one questions. Like, you could see it in her face. Like, she didn't have those bruises yesterday. So it was nice that they actually brought that up, because I'm like, you can't just kind of skirt over that in court, where it's like, you know, she got slapped up. Obviously, Matt was shot. He couldn't be like, I was shot because I was Daredevil. He kind of had to wait for that one. But that was interesting. So I liked everything they did with the actual court case, and then them trying to set up Bullseye and also kill Matt at the same time. Like, that was their whole thing, was like, we're going to kill him. Kingpin is going to walk out. I'm sure they expected to win the case as well. You know, I'm sure they planned on shooting him regardless of what was going to happen. But, you know, I think they were expecting like a nice victory, and then, oh no, Matt got murdered, and also it was Bullseye. That's crazy. But then of course Bullseye shows up and he kills everybody, and I love he was like, they called the dude an amateur and stuff. Or no, he didn't call him an amateur. He called him a poser, which I thought was really fascinating. I was like, you'd never hear people say poser anymore. But he called him a poser, and I was like, okay. Killed all those people out, and then of course shoots Buck in the stomach, and then they do like the full lockdown. It's like, all right, well, we're all trapped in here. Why don't we send a couple people up? We'll kill off Matt. Also, Jessica Jones is in this season. I totally skirted over that, but Jessica Jones pops up for a few episodes. She was cool, of course. They introduced the fact that her powers are kind of on and off, which is interesting. I don't know if they'll go into that or explain anything about that, like why it's happening, or, you know, if they can fix it or anything like that. So we'll see what happens, you know, with the future of her character, but I'm looking forward to that. We do know that Finn Jones, I believe is the actor's name, he's going to be coming back as Iron Fist. You know, like, they had the whole leak where it's like, hey, you know, everybody's seen this, and it's like, yeah, everybody saw your face. So we'll see about that. Honestly, I thought he was going to show up at the last second in there. I thought it was going to be with Luke Cage. I thought it was going to be like, yeah, I had some backup, and then they were just going to show Iron Fist, because, you know, they're the heroes for hire. So I thought that was how they were going to do that. But I'm excited to see them all come back. I'm very curious what they're going to do with Finn Jones, because, you know, Iron Fist, both seasons, very fascinating, very fast. All they need is better writers, because I say this every time I mention it. When he was in that one episode, which I think they called Heroes for Hire, when Iron Fist showed up in Luke Cage season 2 for that one episode, it was the best he was ever written amongst everything he'd been in. He wasn't whiny. He was literally Danny Rand from the comics. And I was like, this was right before his second season came out, and I was hyped. I was like, they figured it out. We're gonna have a great Danny Rand. And then season 2 started, and I was like, these were different writers. I was pissed. I was like, these are clearly not the same people that wrote that episode, because he was right back to whining. I was like, no, we had him. It was perfect. If you never saw that one episode, I'm telling you, Luke Cage season 2, whatever episode that was that actually had Iron Fist in it, that is what Iron Fist is supposed to be in all media. Like, that's what he's like. And I was like, I thought we were gonna have it. So I'm hoping that we got some better writers that are gonna realize, like, hey, let's not make him like the whiny kid. Let's make him like the Zen master he's supposed to be, and then we're good. Because I think of that episode all the time where I'm like, it was right there. Like, we had it. Like, I'm telling you, it was perfect. That was a great episode. And Danny was absolutely phenomenal in that. And it had me hyped for season 2. And then season 2 started. And I was like, oh, okay. It is what it is. But we'll see him when we see him. So back to Daredevil. I thought it was cool seeing Jessica. I like the fact, you know, with the time skip, Jessica and Luke are officially together like they are in the comics. They have a kid and all that. They know the FBI dude, so that's kind of, you know, their connection to this season really is already knowing that guy. But I'm excited to see what they do with those characters going forward, and the little role that they kind of introduced, especially with Jessica and her powers. I'm curious to see that story unfold. If they decide to really deep dive into it, I would love to see what ends up happening with that. There's a whole lot of stuff. I mean, honestly, it's been just about a decade, I admit, which is crazy to say, but it's been just about a decade at this point for all the characters. So I am really curious what they're going to do with everybody, because regardless of which character you're interested in, every single season of those old Netflix shows ended somewhere crazy where it was like, okay, well, here's Danny doing this thing where he's got effing golden guns, which is from a different character in the comics, but he's got the 2 guns. I can't even remember her name, but like Jessica's friend, she ended up with like powers and then kind of started going a little crazy. So I was like, all right. And then for Luke, we don't know what, the in-between of him like starting to become the bad guy and then working for the FBI and stuff like that, which I think we can probably go with that's why he ended up with, the FBI or whoever the guy was technically with. Probably because they were like, hey, you're doing a lot of stuff over here that we don't really like, so let's figure this out. But either way, I'm looking forward to the stories for all those characters. But as a season, I thought it was good. It was definitely better than the first season because obviously we didn't have like the mix up of like, well, here's the original like 3 or 4 episodes in the middle, and then the like original stuff was just like the first episode, and I think like the last 2 episodes were like redone. So it was nice to have like one cohesive storyline all the way through by the same people, and I think it came out a lot better. And the actual ending was crazy, with them having like this whole moment where the city is against Fisk and he's trying to start a war and everything, and then they all get into the courthouse. And I just want to jump ahead like a little bit over all the stuff that happens in the courthouse, because it ends with Fisk on a very nice beach. And I was like, before he was smashing heads in, it made sense that he still had that deal on the table. But I'm like, I can't think that the deal should stand once he started bashing heads. Like, and he's just backhanding people and flipping them over balconies. And I'm like, I don't think the deal is the same. Like, they didn't have a lot of proof. They kind of had like the shipments, and that was about it. It was like, yeah, you're smuggling. Okay, no biggie. Not that much of a deal. It's a little bit of murder in there that they hadn't really discussed, 100%. But it's like, okay, not the craziest thing on earth. I'll give you that. But then he was bashing heads, like literally, he was bashing heads and was murdering people and flipping them over balconies and backhanding them and just shoving them down hallways with one hand. Because, he's Kingpin and he's amazing like that. It was fun to watch, but it was also crazy. And then they're like, take the deal. I'm like, I'm sorry. I know I'm just a dude, but he killed a lot of people in front of a lot of other people. The deal is over. Like, I don't understand how that worked out. Because I'm like, the deal was there when he was sitting at a table and was like, like, I don't want to talk to him. And, he hangs up the phone. That's one thing. But then he was just bashing heads. Like, I do love the fact that when they opened the door, the first thing he did was go boo, and then he socked a dude so hard he hit the wall and snapped his neck. And I was like, well, deal's off the, that's just me, but deal's off the table. Like, you are done. You are dead and gone right now. So I was surprised that he still got that deal and got to just kind of walk off, because I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me at all. I was like, the deal was about 2 minutes ago, pre-head smashing and bloody suit. Great sequence of him just running through and murdering people, but I was like, this is crazy. And then he still got to leave, and I was like, oh, that's Kingpin for you, because that deal made no sense. I'm like, no, he prison or death right now, because that's crazy. But he got to go off. Everybody else goes to prison, of course. Like the whole ATF, they're all in prison when they do like the little the walk pass for Matt after he gets arrested. So of course he ends up in prison. Fisk has to leave and can never return, kind of deal. And all the ATF dudes are in prison. The one guy who, I guess, betrayed like the main bad dude from the ATF or ATV, whatever they called that thing. I know in the comics he ends up being a good guy, so I think that was like their tiny hint. Because I was curious how that was going to play out. I was like, are they going to do like a full reversal at the last second? But it was like, okay, he still went to prison and everything, and he did like the right thing to be like, all right, he took the dude out because he's like, I'm not about to shoot this dude just like right in his face for no reason. And also it was like, hey, you told me this happened. And so he started to realize like, oh, I did kind of F up. That's on me. Like that, I may have screwed up. So, and the dude was super rude. Like, what'd you lose your balls in the fire too? Like, that dude was an absolute twat. Like, man, that guy was an a-hole. Aside from, even outside of the murders, he was a real douchebag. That dude was very fascinating. But we'll see how all these characters end up coming into the fold. Whatever they end up doing next, I don't know if it's officially going to be a Born Again season 3, because obviously with Matt literally outing himself to everyone as Daredevil, it's that classic situation of like, all right, well, what happens now? Aside from him obviously being in prison, they can't really get him for much as far as murder, because he didn't really, I know they got, it's obviously vigilante stuff, so they pinned quite a few murders on him in general, but they need some proof for that. Aside from him actually being a vigilante, I think they can easily be like, yeah, he kind of skirted away pretty quick, especially as a lawyer. He can just be like, yeah, I did this and I didn't do that. So I think they'll find a pretty easy loophole to be like, yeah, he, time served, really good guy. Technically speaking, he was a hero. Even if vigilanteism is illegal, he didn't actually kill the people that they say he killed. He may have, snapped some bones very well. He snapped a lot of bones, but murder, not really on his, to-do list. So I'm sure they'll find an easy way to get him out of there. But I was a little surprised by that. And I wasn't surprised that he went to prison. Like I said, I was more so just the fact that Fisk was just on a pretty beach and he just got to leave. Because I'm like, that's crazy. That part, I was like, huh. Scot-free is fascinating. Because, like I said, pre-murders in front of everybody else, sure. Post-murders, including tossing people over the balcony, I don't understand there being a deal anymore. But he got a deal and he's out of there, so we'll see what happens in the future. Moving on to Punisher. Overall, Daredevil Season 2, Born Again Season 2, pretty good season. There's some stuff that I think Bullseye was probably like my favorite thing just because he's such an interesting character, but I definitely enjoyed the pacing of this season a lot more than the first one, which I think is probably the general consensus. But overall, definitely a good season. I am excited to see what the future holds for these characters, because I don't know if they're going to do, they're going to go back to the Defenders and do like a Defenders Season 2 type of deal, 15 years later or whatever. We'll see what ends up happening, but I am curious to see where in the world they go now with Daredevil just straight up being like, hey, it's Matt Murdock. Like it's Daredevil now. So I'm really curious with that, because that's one of those things where it happens. It's not like that never happens in comics. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure that has actually happened to Matt specifically at least once, maybe more than once. He's done a lot of things in the comics, but I'm pretty sure that has happened to him at least one time. But like, everybody gets out at some point and then something happens. But because they keep it a little bit more grounded when it comes to the shows and the movies and the MCU, I don't think they're gonna pull another Spider-Man, because that was probably the perfect example of exactly what happens in the comics, where it's like, oh my God, we figured out this hero's identity, and then they literally mind wipe everybody. That's actually that's kind of how it goes, if we're being told. That's kind of exactly how it went for Spider-Man, except worse. It was, I'd say we got off pretty easy when it comes to the movies. We'll see what happens, but if you know what I'm talking. If you read the comics or you know about the comics for Spider-Man, you know what I'm talking about when it comes to that sort of situation. But we'll see what happens with Daredevil. But all in all, Born Again Season 2, definitely an upgrade over Season 1. And in general, a pretty interesting continuation of just the weird street level stuff that's happening, especially with Matt officially being Daredevil. But with Daredevil doing his thing, which at this point consists of just kind of sitting in prison in his cool glasses, we move on to Punisher officially for the Punisher One Last Kill special. It was all right. Honestly, that's my opinion of it. I was watching and I was kind of like, it was okay. I guess it's cool. I guess. I mean, he didn't pop up in a casket and kill a whole family or anything, but he did kill a lot of the Nucci's. I know about them mostly because, for me personally, I'm familiar with the Nucci's because of the Punisher video game, and let me tell you, he does not like that family. they're like, no matter what you do, comic wise, when he killed the woman, that's Manucci. In the comics, she gets killed by polar bears because he feeds them to her at the zoo, which I think is also what you do in the game. I know you go to a zoo at the end. I know I fed somebody to some piranhas. You do some wild stuff. You can have a dude get rammed by a rhino. The Punisher game is buck wild. If you've never played it, it's absolutely insane. I love that game. But the special was like, okay, I'm familiar with the Nucci family. That's like a big part of him, a big part of his murders is like, hey, let me just take out this whole effing family. And they do the kind of early recap, like, hey, he took out all these people, and then that kind of led to a power vacuum in the area he was in, which seemed crazier than normal. It was very comic booky, because I'm like, what is going on in this part of New York where it's like, I was like, I understand the power vacuum, but normally it's like, there's a power vacuum and like the powerful people are like having more conversations and things get a little crazy. It's not just like people going ding dong and then they kick a dude in the head and then they throw his puppy in front of a truck, which was insane. But it was absolute pandemonium where he's just walking down the street. There was someone that got shot, like they were just doing like the little montage where he's just walking and ignoring everything. And they had a dude like just arguing and he just drags a guy out of a building. They're yelling and screaming, and then you just hear a gunshot. And it's like, he just killed that dude, like, just in the middle of the street. And I'm like, this is crazier than anything they've ever shown. Like, it was like pure comic book chaos, because I'm like, this makes no sense. They even had this, the cop car came in, and then they backed out, and they tried to leave, and then they set the car on fire. I was like, that was instantaneous, by the way, because I was like, he backed up, and then it was like 15 feet later, the whole car was scorched. I was like, this place is nuts. So that was crazy in itself, because I was like, this makes no sense. This is so buck wild. I'm like, this is more than a power vacuum. This is straight up like pandemonium. But it goes through, Frank's doing his thing, losing his mind, seeing people. And I genuinely just thought it was okay. Like, even the action I thought was like, okay. I didn't think the action was, that's just me personally. I didn't even think the action was like the best action we've seen from Punisher. I thought he did some cool stuff. But I didn't think it was like the crazy. Honestly, I think maybe the beginning was probably my favorite part, and then like the end when he was in, we'll just say it was a bodega. But when he was in the bodega, I think those were like the two best parts. And other than that, it was like, okay, yeah, he's shooting some people and stuff. But him like bursting through the door after he was on fire and then taking those people out in that first apartment was really cool. And then, like, it was fun to watch, him taking some people on the rooftops and everything. They did like the CG body swap when they pushed him and he hits the thing. I was like, it wasn't too bad. It was noticeable CG, but I was like, it's not the worst. It wasn't the worst thing ever. It was fine. But I just thought it was like kind of okay. And maybe it's because it just felt so weird and quick, where I was like, okay, I was going through, I'm like, all right, it's only like 51 minutes total. I think that includes credits. So like 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And I was just like, okay. Needed, I've seen this comment a lot, but I do think it needed like maybe an extra 30. Like it should have been like a solid like hour-long special, or a little bit longer, or at the very least an actual hour of straight up content, because it genuinely would have been like an extra 20 minutes of content. So if it was actually like an hour 10 and just 10 of that was just pure credits, I think at least an actual hour, if we got like an extra 15 to 20 minutes of like just genuine story, I think I would have liked it a lot more. But I felt like it was a little disjointed just because of the way that they went about it, where it was like, okay, and I almost feel like it was a bit of a half measure on both ends. And I think that's what did it for me, because I was like, okay, I'm all in for him hallucinating and like us seeing that as he goes through the process. I thought we were going to see that as he was killing people too. I thought that was going to be a part of it, where, that was a whole thing in Daredevil, where he was like, I still, like, I see my kids and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm actually ready to see that. I'm ready to see him go through this process. And then it felt like kind of instantaneous. It was like he had his moment, and then once he was confronted and he had to kill again, he wasn't seeing anybody. And then, it was like the little girl at the end that he helped out gave him the flower, and then he was like, all right, I'm cool, and now I'm back to being Punisher, which a lot of people pointed it out, of course. 30 straight seconds, if that, of him in the actual Punisher uniform. Ridiculous. Like, ridiculous. He's going to be in the whole movie for Spider-Man. He'll at least have the whole costume. Who knows how much he'll really be in it, but at the very least, he would just look like the Punisher the whole time. Because that is something that they constantly effing do, where, when he showed up in Daredevil, great. He had the actual uniform and everything. It was cool. And then it was like, all right, I'm done being the Punisher, which, as many other people have pointed out, he's constantly done being the Punisher, and then also goes back to being the Punisher. And so we get to see the Punisher costume for 30 seconds because he stopped being the Punisher, and then he just decided to be the Punisher again. Hopefully that's the last time that happens. I imagine it will be, but we shall see. So, who knows what happens when it comes to Spider-Man, but I think we're pretty settled now. He is officially Punisher for the third time, for the last time, for all time. He's the Punisher now, and he gets to have the effing costume. He also gets to kill people, and we'll see how that pans out. But I am looking forward to him in Spider-Man. But like I said, for the actual special itself, it was all right. Like I said, even the action, when I compare it, like I said, the opening, the first part of the fight was really cool. He goes through, and it's mostly him just shooting people. I'm a big hand-to-hand person, so like some of the hand-to-hand stuff he did, like on the rooftop when he would run out of ammo, I enjoyed. But a lot of it was just shooting, and for me personally, I'm just like, if it's gonna be just shooting, it's got to be a little bit cooler, because I felt like he would always shoot like 2 or 3 people at a time. Like when he was on the stairway, I thought it was pretty cool because he had to like hit the corners and stuff, and he threw the fire extinguisher and everything. Also, the fire extinguisher blowing up legit is like the exact sound effect that they use in every video game when you shoot a fire extinguisher. I thought that was so funny, because I'm like, I've heard that exact sound effect specifically for fire extinguishers in a bunch of video games. It is like the sound effect. So I don't know if that's just been accurate this whole time, and that's literally what it sounds like if you shoot a fire extinguisher. But that kind of gave me a chuckle, because I'm like, I've heard that fire extinguisher explosion a lot, and it's always that sound in video games. So maybe that's just what they actually sound like, because I'm like, that's funny. That was funny to me. But the stairwell portions I thought was pretty cool. And like I said, some of the other hand-to-hand stuff was good. But the opening part where he bursts through the door and takes everybody out in that first apartment, and then killing the dudes in the bodega, where it was just like, that's where it was just like the over-the-top Punisher kills, where like he broke the one dude's arm and then he still slit his throat. And then the last big dude came in, and then he's just stabbing him over and over with the pen and just different parts of his body till he like coughs up blood on his eye. And I was just like, yeah, he's dead too. He definitely got that guy. But those two moments I think were the highlight when it comes to the action, and then we'll see what happens going forward. They, like I said, they have the Nucci's, but it's literally just Manucci at this point, so it's just her left. So we'll see if they even bother with that going forward. But who knows? Who knows what we get from the Punisher moving forward? But I am excited to see it. Like I said, I think this one was just okay, and it was just kind of like that half and half situation. I do wish I got to see a bit of the, like the chaos in his mind as he was fighting. Like, I know we had to focus on the fight, but I felt like that was kind of the point, was to be like, hey, can't he like look, can't he like see his children or see his buddy and like have that situation go through as he's going through the killing, and like that, as maybe they talk to him, or maybe he just sees them and he starts to realize like, okay, I do need to be the Punisher. Like, he obviously, that's what happened at the end, because he saw the girl and was like, hey, that she reminded me of you, so maybe I do have, I will keep going. But I felt like if they done that as they were going through, where he was just like, man, I don't want to do this, but then he sees it and he's like, I'm doing good here, maybe I will keep going. Like, if they just kind of let it play up throughout, I think I would have enjoyed it a little more. But that's just me. Like I said, I think it was okay overall, but I am excited to see it going forward. Looking forward to seeing the actual costume for, more than 30 seconds. That'll be pretty neat. But would love to know your thoughts on both Daredevil and Punisher. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about season 2 and the special, and your least favorite parts for sure. I want to know what you guys didn't end up liking, whether it was from the the season or the special. I'm definitely excited to hear what you guys think about it, and definitely want to know, where in the world do you guys think we're headed? Like, we know where Punisher is going, but where the F is Daredevil going? I'm so curious about that. He's just in prison right now. What the F are they going to do with him? So I would love to know your thoughts. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.